Hi, I am Kyle Cordes at Oasis Digital, and in this video I'm going to quickly answer many questions about Oasis Digital and about the work we're hiring for. These are things that in an ideal world you might remember to ask or I might remember to tell you about in an interview, but instead by just putting them here all at once, you're getting the whole set of information. I'm recording this in 2021, but the information really changes pretty slowly, so if you are getting this video from us at a later year, you can assume the information is still correct. Now, while I carry on talking, I'm going to go ahead and rotate through some photos of our office space because you can get a little bit of a feel of the kind of company we are from that, in addition to what I'm talking about. Now, as I talk about what we're looking for, you should consider the job post that you came from to see this video as the most official source, so we'll occasionally update important things there without re-recording this whole video. Now, we are looking for remote software developers, so software developers who will work on our projects but not in our office. But critically, you do need to live and work, and I guess have the right to work, in the United States. So we are looking for remote, but for these positions, for this video, we are not looking for global remote, but only US remote. Specifically, we're looking for full-time, 100% W-2 employees. For many of the roles, these will be salaried employees. For a few, they'll be hourly, but in both cases, they'll be full-time. Now, full-time to us means approximately 40 hours a week. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but we believe in a reasonably good work-life balance. So full-time, but not crazy excessive. We do sometimes post other jobs that have other parameters, especially around more global, but that would be in a different job post. That would not be here. For this job post, US only. Later, I'll mention some more specific things about our project needs. Those tend to change a little more, so again, make sure you read the job posts closely. Sometimes people that begin working remotely or begin working on a single project for us sometimes end up coming to work at our headquarters that you're seeing pictures of as I continue to talk. First, some background about Oasis Digital. So we are a training, consulting, and software development company. Our customers are mostly around the United States, but they're also mostly global companies. So our customers tend to be global firms. And so as a result, global firms, they tend to come to smaller firms like us when they have specific needs. So some people call us a boutique consultancy because that's a word that's sometimes applied to small firms that have specializations to help out larger firms with their needs. Some of our specialty areas as I speak this are Angular, Node, React, TypeScript, the Google Cloud Platform, sometimes AWS and Azure, DevOps topics, full stack of all kinds. We have some Java work underway. We have a little bit of Go work underway. So we have many technical specialty areas, although the bulk of them, probably 3/4 of our technical specialty areas, are around web platform and web platform full stack. Again, look at the job post for the specific tech on a specific hiring. We have several kinds of projects we do. Sometimes we do training, where we'll do one or a series of classes for a customer. Sometimes we'll take on an entire project for a customer. But most frequently, as we work on larger and larger projects, we found that we're often working in conjunction with our customers' developers. So we often have blended teams where several people from Oasis Digital are working with several people from one of our customers to either create or enhance some software for their needs. When customers engage Oasis Digital, they almost always are looking for our people, for our developers to be the most skilled, the most knowledgeable. And for that reason, most people that we hire here at Oasis Digital are already very skilled and experienced developers. Now, we sometimes hire entry-level and intern roles for certain special needs where people have a chance to develop that high level of skill while working here. But again, take a look at the job post so you know what level we're looking to hire right now. We are almost always hiring intermediate to experts already. Now, for the projects that we have going, Of course, I can't tell you the names of the customers, particularly not in this video, but as I record this, and in most cases, we have several different customer projects that are growing right now. And so we are trying to hire multiple developers to work across multiple projects here, and those projects are serving multiple of our customers. Now, keeping that in mind, there are certain commonalities among most of our projects. So, most of our customer projects are very collaboration heavy. So we almost never take on projects where just a single developer is working in isolation. We're typically working on larger, more complex things where there will be a lot of collaboration both among Oasis Digital developers and with our customer developers. The projects we take on often have a substantial enterprise flavor for them, and that often means that there will be extensive discussion around extensive specific needs of the software being created. So we tend to work on quite complex enterprise scale software. If you put those together, that means that our work tends to be a good fit for collaborators and not a good fit for the sort of a developer isolation hermit stereotype. As I mentioned before, customers usually bring us in to work on the hard stuff, to work on the tricky parts, to solve the problems, and our current set of projects are no exception. So our customers are looking for us to be able to work on the interesting, on the tricky bits, and so that's what we are looking for in the people that we are hiring. I shouldn't have to say this now that 2020 is past us, but for the sake of removing ambiguity, the teams on our projects are already remote and distributed. Most of our customers are already using substantially distributed teams, and Oasis Digital has had mostly distributed teams since long before 2020 ever happened. That means that we're actually already quite good at it. Now that said, there is a lot of power and value in occasionally working in person, and so for most developers that work for us, even if they're 700 miles away across the country, will visit. They might visit here at our headquarters. They might visit with someone else at a customer site, but we tend to visit occasionally. That ranges between perhaps 0 times a year for some developers here, as many as 3 or 4 for other developers who are working in sort of more managerial type roles. An important caveat: although our customers are spread quite widely across the US and are almost always part of a global organization, it's important to know that quite a few of our customers have an East Coast presence, and we always mention that. We say we should always talk about that in an interview, because a person working on the US West Coast may find it challenging to attend a morning meeting, collaboration, or otherwise if a project's maybe core decision makers are located on the East Coast. So beware of time zones, and we always make sure to talk about that when we get closer to the point of hiring someone. Next, as I mentioned, our work is mostly for large, complex companies, right? So that means that there's often a pretty steady stream of meetings. It means that projects tend to go on for quite a long time, rarely less than a few months, often a couple of years or more. Of course, the customer could always fire Oasis Digital if they became very dissatisfied. That happens incredibly rarely. We mostly work on projects that keep going a long time because we work hard on doing great work for our customers. Our large customer projects almost always have some variant of Agile software development in use. Sometimes it's a Scrum variant with some local tweaks. Sometimes there's kind of other parts of the Agile constellation, but some sort of generally iterative Agile project will be in place on almost every project we work on. Many of our customers, especially again the largest, tend to have complex IT requirements where they will issue a computer to every single individual person collaborating on their project. That sometimes means that a developer here at Oasis Digital might have maybe an Oasis Digital computer, but also a customer project computer. Every once in a while, it means that a developer here has more than one customer project computer assigned to them. We try to avoid that, but that does happen. Usually, it's possible to simply ship these computers to and fro. Every once in a while, we have a customer who has very specific needs where we actually need a site visit to kick off and get issued the computer in question. Now, that hasn't happened much since the chaos of 2020, but I expect that will return on some projects in the future. Now, next big topic, the best things about working for Oasis Digital, why you should consider this as a great place to go ahead and finish that application and interview for. The first is we have this intense focus on collaboration and intense focus on quality. So people working here on projects tend to learn at a very high pace. I've had people say that, working on a project here for a year, they felt like they got 3 years of experience in that year because they were just moving so fast, just massive fast learning all the time. Next best thing, as I mentioned before, we are already remote and distributed. We're already good at it because we didn't figure it out in 2020. We've been doing it since probably 2005 or so. Next, because our projects are large and complex, you have lots of opportunity here to work on many complex things, to get a really both deep and broad experience. Some specifics. We work for, again, big complex companies. They are mostly embracing a microservice architecture. Some of them are even embracing a micro front-end architecture. So these sort of, common current popular patterns for doing complex work are also common on our projects. Our projects tend to be kind of multi-everything. There'll be many platforms and many technologies. There'll be many developers working on many projects at the same time with some shared code. Sometimes they're mono repos. Sometimes they're multiple repos. There's almost always CI. There's there's sometimes more than one CI solution in use. There are often containers in use. So there are a lot of complexities, but of the good kind of complexities, the kind that really help you grow greatly and quickly as a developer. Now let's talk about some of the worst things about the job, about working here. The first is, as I mentioned, some of our projects are sometimes kind of meeting heavy. I think the worst case we've seen are projects that are dealing with just a great amount of complexity that has to be discussed and have gone through periods where people attend a couple of meetings a day for a while. That's the most extreme. It's much more common for people to have a meeting every day or two. But still, compared to some organizations, our projects tend to be a bit meeting heavy. Next, although our projects are almost always agile, at the same time, there are sometimes urgent needs and sometimes deadlines where people end up, sort of struggling to figure out how to meet these urgent needs and how to meet these deadlines. People call boutique expert consultancies typically because they're having some kind of difficulty or trouble. And so that means there tend to be the sort of stressors that can be a bit of a negative of working, or not even here specifically, but working in a consultancy. While some of the features and systems we work on are subtle and complex and technically interesting, there are also screens that are just CRUD screens, shuffling data between a data store, some logic, a screen, back to the logic, back to the data store. So inevitably there is some so-called CRUD work in our types of projects. I mentioned that on some of our projects, many of them, customers will issue dedicated computers. Sometimes those are less pleasant to work with than a sort of a individually well-configured developer's machine might be. Next, again, because of organizational complexity, although we are very agile in the sense of upgrading versions quite frequently, some of our customer projects have hoops to jump through before versions of dependencies and tools can be upgraded. So that can be sometimes a source of frustration that, maybe you're on node 14 on some side project and you're stuck at node 12 or even node 10 on some customer project. If you're in Angular, maybe you're on Angular 11 and working on getting to 12 on one project. Maybe there's another project that's still stuck on version 9 because of various complexities. And then lastly, the last sort of downside of this type of work is that a lot of the projects we do end up being deployed internally at our customers behind their firewalls. And so although you'll be able to, write a great resume entry about the work you did and, tell your friends, without disclosing any secrets, but tell your friends about the great tech you're working on, it's quite likely that the actual project you help build is going to be hidden behind some firewall. Like you can't bring it up on the web and show it off. So we very rarely work on things that are consumer facing and readily available to show off. Okay, so again, those were sort of the downsides of this kind of work. Next, our technical stack. Now, I mentioned our technical stack earlier. I'll mention a few of the things again here. React, Angular, Node, JavaScript, TypeScript, Mongo, Google Cloud Platform, AWS, DevOps systems, CI systems, Kubernetes, sometimes some Go, sometimes some Java, sometimes some .NET. We have some Blazor going. So we have this big constellation around web and full stack, and then many other sort of server-side or ancillary supporting technologies. The best candidate knows something about several of those, right? So when we find sort of the ideal person to hire, they're both very knowledgeable about whatever the most key skill we're hiring for. So if we're hiring for people that are going to jump on Angular projects, the ideal candidate is someone who has some good experience with Angular, and then also knows something about one or more of those other constellation of technologies. We are not looking for the unicorns who know everything about every technology I just listed. Somebody who knows a lot about all of them doesn't really know a lot about all of them, because it means they actually know just a little about all of them. So we're looking for sort of realistic people that have a couple of technologies. So maybe you have a couple of things where you know a lot about, and then some others you know some about. That's what we're looking for. Let me see here. So I mentioned Angular is probably the most common technology that we're known for, but we also have some projects where React knowledge really comes in handy. We occasionally have projects where mobile app experience is highly relevant. Sometimes it is mobile apps, sort of web technology to build mobile apps with Ionic, or one of the native JavaScript/native implementations, or sometimes it's actual native mobile apps, although that's not as common because, again, we mostly work on complex enterprise projects, which tend to use the sort of web platform extended to mobile. They don't tend to use native mobile as often. Okay, when I mention Angular, I do mean Angular, not AngularJS. So as I described this in the first half of 2021, we don't currently have any AngularJS projects underway or hiring for. It's always possible we will in the future, but AngularJS, the older one, we really do not use that much anymore. So Angular means Angular, ideally, version 12, 11, 10, 9, something like that. Lastly, because we are brought in to be experts, that means that someone joining this at the intermediate to expert level is going to need to be able to really demonstrate fluency on whatever the most key technology is that we're being brought in for. So what does fluency mean? Fluency means that you might have to go, maybe look something up in a search real quick, but generally speaking, you just know it well. So whatever technology it is. So, for example, if we were hiring for a React project, and in our interview process, which I'll get to in a moment, we would use a React project to work on together in an interview, and fluent would mean that if we say, hey, can you make a component? Yeah, your fingers just start typing and a component comes out. And if we say, yeah, but put in a prop with this name, you know how to do that. If we're working with Angular, it means that if we say, yeah, make an input binding, you know where to put the cursor, you know what to put in there to make an input binding to have it work. So fluency means not just the ability to eventually make something work, but real top of mind awareness of kind of all the basics and common constructs of the language or framework in question. So that flows into our interview process. So our interview process, we usually have either 2 or 3 interviews. In the first interview, kind of as early as possible in our time together, we want to be looking at code together. So ideally within maybe 5 minutes of when we meet online, we are looking at code. Maybe you're talking about that code a little bit, and then we'll have you write some code. And then we'll sort of make some changes on it somewhat together, where we'll talk about some of the changes first, and then pick out one, and then maybe you'll make one of the changes after we talked about several possible ones together, that kind of thing. So we try to make our first most important interview be sort of a microcosm of working on a project together. Then for a second and sometimes third interview, we'll sometimes go even a little deeper still in the tech, and we'll also talk about other topics more. So sometimes there'll be specifics about a project that warrant more conversation. And of course, we'll want to get to know you more. You'll want to get to know us more. So we'll spend more time together in a second or sometimes third interview. Usually all three of these interviews are online. The first one is pretty much always online. Sometimes for local candidates, people who happen to be in our St. Louis, Missouri metro area, sometimes someone will come in for that second or third interview. But even then, we are totally on board with remote hiring. It is completely fine to do the entire process over an online meeting. Okay, so thank you for making it through this far. Hopefully you enjoyed this short intro, and we'll see you in an interview. Bye-bye.